calling in from outside Europe, and probably some people are going to be watching this later on the, possibly on the playback in the middle of the night. But welcome to the Rhein-Main Post. Technical meeting today is going to be on the thorny issue of VAT, value-added tax, sales tax here in Europe, especially how that relates to the federal projects. Before we get to that, as usual, I have some announcements to make for the Post to keep everybody informed about what's going on in the region. So first of all, if you're in the room or if you're online, sorry, switch off your camera, keep the microphone muted until we get to the discussion session.
Or unless you're a speaker.
Thank you, Tim. We will be recording this and posting it to YouTube. Given the nature of the discussion, we do have a disclaimer right up front. If we decide there are some reasons we wouldn't want to post it, then we'll obviously look at that. But the presentations will be available on our classic website. This is the roster of post offices for 2022. So we're getting towards the end of the year. We are looking for volunteers to come and support the Post for next year. If anybody out there is interested in taking on one of these positions, please talk to a board member, talk to me, talk to Tim, talk to Scott Turigan, Post President. The Rhein-Main Post has got a very long history, and I think pretty much everybody that comes into it has come into it in recent years. Has come into it into a lively organization, and we sometimes take that for granted, right? The Post lives from the volunteers that contribute to it day by day. So we're really looking for people that can come in to support the Post. I'll hand over to Tim to talk about the programs that we have coming up in the future.
So firstly, it looks like maybe our group photo is frozen, at least on mine, but don't worry about that. It doesn't play a role in the meeting today. We are busy putting together the program for calendar year 24. We're going to finish the calendar year 23 really strong with today's very important event that we have. And next month, we'll be talking about resiliency. We'll have a colleague of ours from Stantec who is presenting that. We also have a really nice Christmas Market Fest in Wiesbaden. I have a slide on that coming up. And then we're building the program starting in January. Lalit Vadva has agreed to present the US government program for calendar year 24, FY 24. And that will kick off then the rest of the program for FY 24. I won't read them all, but we're already building a strong program. I would say, book early for our January event. Usually we get about 100 people for that. That will most likely be at Little Italy in Wiesbaden. And again, that's usually really well attended. And so be on the lookout for more communications on that coming out soon. Brian, back to you.
I think you got on the slide there, actually.
And then the Christmas Fest, this is more details on that. It would be great if we could get a big crowd to come out and celebrate all together. It's been a very good year, I think, for our Post, and I think we have reasons to celebrate. So if you can join us, that's great. These are the details, and they'll be posted with this presentation so that you can hopefully join us on Thursday, the 14th of December in Wiesbaden for a nice meal. Brian, over to you.
Next slide, please. Is Chris on?
He is.
Chris, would you like to start about this slide?
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So we are seeing a good turnout in our membership update. We have 13 new members that joined the post in 2023, so our numbers are steadily, even though slowly, growing. So if you have anyone interested in joining SAMI, please just let them to reach out to me for any information that is necessary to join our organization. We have 3 new people who joined the individual membership. Amanda and Luca Cerbone and Mr. Alex Shar. So warm welcome to everyone. Please, next slide. And as far as the sustaining members, you can move, Brian, to the other one too, so we can see who are the 27 companies that are making all these events possible. So a big thank you to each and every company that supporting us on this journey. Over.
Thanks, Chris. Nick?
I think the cameras also doesn't matter anyway, but I'll come up here to make sure you guys can hear me. I do have a big thing to talk about. It's in red because it's important. The LDP program application window is open. It runs through the 1st of December, so I'll be talking about it today. I'll be talking about it in November, but it's a fabulous opportunity. I think Brian and Scott have both gone through the program as young leaders in this post, and it's not just for this post. The leader development program is a really excellent way to learn how to network, learn how to build soft skills, and learn how to really interact with the SAMI post, whatever post you might end up at. So there is information up there at that link, how to get there. I do believe you have to be an active SAMI member for a certain period of time to go through the program. So if you are interested in it, but you're not a SAMI member, sign up for SAMI, and it's really cheap as a young professional. And then go through it, and you'll have an opportunity again next year. It runs every year from JETSI to JETSI. So that is really important. I really want to throw that out there. It doesn't have to be a government person to do this program. It could be somebody from industry. And if you are interested at all, I encourage you strongly to reach out to Scott or reach out to Brian or reach out to me, and we'll get you a whole bunch of information on it. One other update from the normal things that are on this slide, PPI to pass. If you are a government person and you're interested in your PE, they have a ton of information and a ton of support to help you pass your PE. So I put a link for that up there. And then the last thing I want to say, I didn't get a chance to talk about it last month. I think I was traveling or doing something, but we had a fantastic young members event. We had a ton of people show up from government. It was fantastic. We are looking to try to do something again. There is a spot in February that we're sure we're going to do something, young professionals, and then for sure we're going to try to do something at the golf course leading up to the next golf tournament. But always looking for good ideas. So if you have a good idea on something, please shoot it out to me. Otherwise, be on the lookout for more events. That's all I got.
Thank you, Nick. Hand over to Britta.
Okay. I've got to remember what my dates are, looking at the slides here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are today. Just a couple of updates. We will once again be opening up the application process for the STEM scholarship for 2024. It'll go live on the 1st of January of 2024. And the deadline to submit for high school students is the 29th of March. We will be reviewing all applications received in the few weeks thereafter, and we will make an announcement no later than the 3rd of May. We hope to actually award those scholarships to the students and their families at the golf tournament in May, if it is in May. If it's not until June, we'll work around that and figure something out. So if you know anyone that's a high school senior interested in STEM, actively engaged in various programs at their school and planning to go to college, pursuing one of the disciplines associated with STEM, please let them know of this. It's easy money. The application process is pretty straightforward. We're just really looking for some background information, some recommendations, and a short essay. So not a lot to do for this one, unlike some of the other scholarships. We have done outreach to Wiesbaden High School, Stuttgart High School, and Frankfurt International School. We've made some great contacts at both of the Department of Defense schools, having a little bit of a challenge getting people to respond from Frankfurt International School. So if anyone online or in the room knows anybody there that can help push the information out, please let me know. I'll definitely follow up. I would also like to note that there will be an opportunity for volunteers in the spring at Wiesbaden High School for their career day. They're always looking for a variety of professionals to come in and speak to their students about the career field that they're in, how they got there, the challenges they faced, and so forth. So if that's something that you might be interested in, please shoot me an email and let me know. I'll keep your name on the list. And as I find out the details, I'll make sure we get that posted out there and distributed to the volunteers. Next slide, please. And we just actually had a big event on the 12th of October at Wiesbaden High School at their STEM Academy. It was a little bit of a last minute thing. I think they had to fill an afternoon. So they reached out to us and asked us to send a couple of volunteers. That was Ken and I. Showed the picture of Ken because his presentation was much more exciting than mine. He actually showed up with a model and great posters and a presentation, and he was just so excited. So this is him on that day. Got a really warm welcome from the students and positive feedback from the teachers that were associated with the program. So thank you to Ken for stepping up and doing that, and hopefully we can do more of this in the future. And if you have any ideas for any additional STEM outreach, please do reach out to me and let me know. Thank you.
Okay, Chandra?
Yep. Hey, just a couple quick questions or a couple quick comments. As I noted here, the national SAME National has migrated over the data from our classic Rhein-Main post site over to the new backend system that runs their main site. We're still in the process of moving things over. They did not move everything. They moved kind of the core bits, but things like the media archive and some of the other stuff that we've taken on that actually gets a fair amount of traffic on our site has not been moved over. So we need to actually kind of set that up. I was able to post this meeting on the new website. So if you navigate just to same.org and go to the regular, find the post and go to Rhein-Main, you'll see the new format. This meeting was highlighted there, and going forward, for a while, I'll probably post to both locations, but as we're able to move data over and finally step away from the old classic one, we'll move everything over to the new site. So if anybody sees anything there and has any suggestions, I'm happy to take them. Back to you, Tim.
Okay, thanks, Chandler. And so that's the end of our post announcements. For the rest of the meeting, I'll hand over to Tim.
Thank you, Brian, and good timing. You're right on track for the meeting, and our camera is back as well. So everything is working now. So we are coming to you live from the dining facility at Clay Kaserne in Wiesbaden. We have about 11 people here in the room. We have 47 people online, which just is an indication for how popular and important this topic is, that we have such an interesting group of people coming together to discuss this. And I was hoping to be able to have this event as a roundtable discussion. And in having some conversations with some of the board members in advance, there was one concern that maybe people would be reluctant to speak on this topic because fear of indicting themselves for doing something wrong in the past. And nothing could be further from the goal that we want to have on this. And so I thought it would be good if we start with really the purpose of this conversation and roundtable discussion that we're going to have right now, which is a little bit of a disclaimer, but it's really to share some of our viewpoints and opinions that we have on this topic. And it's not to be considered either professional tax, financial, or legal advice. So anything you say is just sharing ideas, hopefully lessons learned that we can help people perform better in this particular area. Also, the views and opinions expressed today are just those of individuals. So nobody's speaking on behalf of the US government, or I'm not speaking on behalf of my organization. But again, we're just sharing information. And then I think the last point just speaks for itself. It's a little bit legalese, but more or less, please, everybody's situation is unique. Every company is unique. Every project is unique. So don't take any of this information that we have today and necessarily apply that towards your strategy for compliance, is basically what that's saying. But to get beyond that, we are very fortunate today to have 3 financial tax experts joining us for our roundtable discussion, so that it's not necessarily just sharing lessons learned and past experiences, but actually getting some really good knowledge and intelligence applied to our conversation that we're going to have today. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I don't want to necessarily even attempt some of their last names. So Laura, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Tim. My name is Laura Strzymiecka. It's enough when you remember Laura or Laura. I'm a senior manager in the indirect tax team at PwC Poland. I specialize also in SOFA and VAT treatment of deliveries for US Army and NATO members.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
And Petra, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hello. First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you all, even until only by online. My name is Petra Levkova, and I work as a tax advisor in a Slovak partner office in Bratislava for 20 years. The focus of my work is providing of tax consultancy services regarding VAT, international tax law, and I'm looking forward to participating in this discussion and sharing some useful information related to VAT exemption in Slovak Republic. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. And last but not least, Jens.
Yeah, let me complete that round. My name is Jens Müller-Lee. I'm an indirect tax partner at PwC here in Germany. And of course, the NATO SOFA is really a hot topic for the military forces, especially here in Germany, because it goes along with some complexity, I have to say. Already for years, and even for tax advisors, I have to admit, it's not an easy field, right? Because it's not regularly crossing basically your tables. That's basically it. But nonetheless, not only questions from the forces are coming to us, but as well questions from other entrepreneurs here in Germany, like retailers and so on. So what type of exemption certificates do we need in order to apply exemptions properly for the forces? And when you enter in that discussion, it's really getting difficult. It's really getting up to the details. And so far, I'm also very interested to learn about what other approaches and other EU member states are taken. So it will be a valuable discussion for me as well, meeting here Laura and Petra.
Very good. Thank you, Jens. And we were a little bit strategic in choosing our geographies in that Poland and Germany are 2 of the areas where the US government has a large majority of their assets and construction and design work done. And then also Slovakia being almost a little bit more of a new area where, for example, a new IDIQ was just let out, which I think 7 companies were on that IDIQ. So a lot of activity there, and therefore 3 very good geographies to discuss this. And I thought I would kick off the discussion with this. And this is a clause that is taken out of an IDIQ, I think a very standard clause that is included in a lot of our IDIQs. Now this one is the IDIQ was limited to Germany, Poland, and the Czech Republic, I believe. And so therefore only 3 countries named in this. But in starting with this, if you were Tim Conley, go back 20 years ago, and you saw this clause in your IDIQ, you would think, all of the work I do underneath this IDIQ is exempt from VAT. So therefore, I don't need to worry about that because I'm exempt. I was wondering, Laura, what do you think of that comment? So Tim Conley, 20 years ago, sees his IDIQ, thinks all of his work is exempt that he performs under this framework contract. What do you think of that statement?
First of all, we should start from this, that VAT is a general tax that applies to, in principle, to all commercial activities involving production, distribution of, and provision of services. In order to verify whether the exemption under SOFA applies, we should verify whether there are all the conditions are met. So first of all, goods and services should be purchased by or for the US Armed Forces. And I understand that in this case, it was fulfilled. The purpose of purchasing the goods or services was to supply the military services. So I assume that this is also done. That was also done. And the third thing is a formal requirement, which provides that such goods and services should be confirmed with the certificate obtained from the US Armed Forces. And what is important, under SOFA, such certificate should be obtained. And nothing is said about the form, about the deadline, about the timeline, and nothing like this. But according to the Polish rules, which implemented SOFA, such deadline was settled, and the certificate should be provided and should be granted by US Armed Forces before submission of tax return for a given accounting period. So in case the company didn't have such a certificate before submission of the tax return for this period, then exemption does not apply. And what in such a case, it can be, the exemption can be applied by reimbursement of VAT paid on a quarterly basis. So if the conditions are not met, and these formal conditions concerning the properly issued certificate, then the reimbursement scheme applies.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. And I think everybody could probably understand that Tim Conley of 20 years ago had very little understanding of the complexity of this topic and everything that it includes, which we'll go into a little bit more detail coming up. But Jens, if you were talking to Tim Conley 20 years ago and you heard him say, hey, everything I do under this contract, all the design services and planning services that I do under this contract are exempt, what would your advice be to Tim Conley?
Well, you know, I'm a lawyer, so I would first of all look into the laws as well. And here I would be getting confused, same as you were confused probably at the time. Because funnily, I mean, you should expect that when talking about VAT exemptions, everything should be regulated in the German VAT code, which is not exactly true in that field, because we have, it's not even a NATO SOFA exemption. We have several exemptions when it comes to supplies to NATO forces, really depending on which forces that are. And then even if you're looking at the, well, let's call that the standard SOFA exemption, that's Article 67, Para 3 of the SOFA agreement. Even here we have differences in terms of applying that exemption, because, well, documentation you receive from the US military might look different as opposed to the documentation you receive from the Belgian or the Dutch troops. So that's really a huge field. And what we first got here in Germany, which really kind of shed a bit light in that area, was a decree issued by the Ministry of Finance in 2006. That was the first time when we really had official guidance under which we could sincerely act, which in the meantime has been amended several times. I think the last amendment was going back to 2017, but still, it's really a huge number of literature you would have to check, and you have to consider in order to really properly understand what's going on and what the conditions are. And even more, I mean, also the VAT legislation on a German and European level has a big impact as well on those type of procedures. For example, we had, and Laura was mentioning that already. So we have quite strict requirements when it comes to the proof of the exemption. And in the past, and I mentioned this decree from 2006, the authorities claimed, well, look, guys, that is the rule, and you have to follow that rule. So we had papers in Germany, which even a German wouldn't understand, which are called Abwicklungsschein. And I believe there's not even an English translation into it, at least not a proper one. And that served as a one and only proof for that exemption. Now we had ECJ jurisdiction, so from the European Court of Justice in the field of VAT, which dealt also with the question on the classification of proof for certain VAT exemptions. That jurisdiction was basically dealing with other exemptions for intercommunity and export trade, but nonetheless, what we learned from the ECJ at the time was, well, those the requirements that are set out by member states might not be material preconditions for the exemptions, but might only be formal preconditions. So what does it mean? That is a legal, that is just a legal wording. Not exactly, it's not just legal wording, but it really has an impact in practice because, yeah, you have to follow the rules on the type of proof. That is still the case also nowadays. But if you cannot provide the proof as it is officially required, you still have the possibility to provide other proof. Yeah. In practice, probably that has not changed too much because still tax authorities would look into what is officially prescribed because, well, that's the way our authorities are basically acting like. So you're saying, well, this is kind of formal criteria, and they will stuck to it, and they will probably on first glance disallow any other type of proof. But still, mere formally, you now have the chance to provide proof also by other means, which is, well, also good news, because in the past you weren't just able to, just heal any leakage in your type of proof. But nowadays, that seems to be possible.
Right, very good. Thank you, Jens. And in case anybody is not picking up on this, I want to just touch on a few key points here. So the difference between the Tim Conley of 20 years ago and now being informed by what Laura and Jens has told me, I realize that this issue is governed by a SOFA, a Status of Forces Agreement. It's governed by a host nation tax code, and in Germany, certain decrees even. There's an exemption form. There's EU VAT legislation procedures, and then throw on top of that authorities. Okay, so you have 5 elements that are very, very relevant to this topic, and all of them are different depending on what country you're in, has been my experience. And maybe just to touch then on our third geography that we have Petra, who also was very thoughtful to put together some PowerPoint slides, and I just happened to include the next one because it is a good segue into the next topic, and also builds on what Laura and Jens have just told us. So Petra, maybe you can give us some of the basics on the Slovak Republic.
Thank you very much, Tim. As you can see this slide, I would like to inform about this DCA, Defense Cooperation Agreement, that entered into force on 1st of April 22. And before this date, we didn't have in Slovak Republic any possibility for VAT exemption for main business transactions. Only VAT exemption in the case if you are delivering goods or providing services to armed forces, so military persons or similar, but no VAT exemption for business transaction. Now we have this law or international treaty that takes precedence over the laws. It was also approved by Slovak National Council of Slovak Republic. So this DCA is really as a regular law in Slovak Republic. It should be concluded for 10 years with possibility of extension, and some details information also regarding this VAT exemption are subject to these implementing agreements. This is, I think, really important agreement for foreign companies or also for Slovak companies that would like realize some transactions in Slovak Republic. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sorry.
Davide, to
Okay.
mute. Sorry, Davide, yep.
Okay. Okay.
Davide needs to mute, yep. Petra,
Yes.
back to you.
Yes, so this is the most important law that we can use in case of these transactions of foreign companies in Slovak Republic. And when company would like to apply this VAT exemption, you can, or I can show this next slides. Article 16 of this DCA officially can apply this exemption if you are, or there are two possibilities, at point of purchase or by reimbursement. Yes, we have a lot of companies or some companies in Slovak Republic that would like, or they awarded a contract with US forces, for example, for US Army of Corps and Engineers, and now we issue invoice on these US forces. What should we do now? Can we apply this VAT exemption ASAP, or do we need another steps? And here is the question: what is the project? What are you providing? And most of these services are services that are connected to immovable property in Slovak Republic. So engineer studies, coordination, architects, and so on. And if you are invoicing these services to US Army, the place of supply is in Slovak Republic for VAT purposes. The transfer of tax liability is not possible, so this reverse charge is not applicable, and for this reason, the foreign company is obliged to register for VAT purposes in Slovak Republic before starting providing of these services. And subsequently, you can use this direct tax exemption according to DCA, but there are some conditions they should be met. The first one is this VAT registration in Slovak Republic of this foreign company, so Slovak VAT ID number. You need tax exemption certificate complete but by US forces. Then we can issue this invoice without Slovak VAT with reference to DC8, and we need also include this invoice to Slovak VAT return and VAT records. And the last one, everything should be sent to Slovak Ministry of Defense, because all these tax authorities and also ministry, they would like to take control or have control over all these companies and transactions. Practical problems are that a lot of or this legislative, we don't have binding interpretation or guidelines. We don't have only email or telephone consultations with Ministry of Defense and with Financial Directorate. So our recommendation is individual approach. For each client, we discuss or let confirm this transaction and procedure, including this VAT exemption with Ministry of Defense. And that's the only way how to have really full VAT exemption in Slovak Republic. So
No, that's
maybe
very helpful, Petra. And then I think you touched on a very key point and something that Tim Conley 20 years ago never would have thought of, which is registration. So if Tim Conley's company was in Germany and asked to provide the services in Slovakia, are you saying there is registration required on a VAT level in order to be considered exempt?
20 years ago.
Oh, no. So now is it the Tim Conley 20 years ago today? Yes. Sorry, I know that's difficult.
Yes. VAT registration, and then you can issue this invoice without Slovak VAT. So you can apply this VAT exemption. 20 years before, nothing possible. You have to invoice with Slovak VAT.
Yeah. So registration in countries, even if you don't have a business there, fairly key point, right?
If you are providing the services, they are connected to immovable here in Slovak Republic, for example, airbase or some buildings and so on. The place of supply of the services is Slovak Republic. That's the reason.
No, and I just want to double down on that point, and then I'm going to work my way back through the geographies. Jens, back to you. If you're an American company, same types of services, doing design work for real estate, Immobilien in Germany, is there a requirement to register for VAT purposes if you want to be exempt?
Well, depends. So first of all, for services, we usually have we usually have a general rule that is implemented here in well, I don't mention the section in the German VAT code, but it's based on EU legislation and basically says that is to be paid by the customer if the customer is an entrepreneur. Now we are not talking about an entrepreneur, but about the forces which are not economically active here in Europe. So we would go back to another rule which would basically prescribe that the services are as a standard to be taxed where the supplier resides. But there are a couple of exceptions to that rule. And one of those is indeed any sort of services that are linked to real property. So in the case you described, it seems like we have taxable services in Germany. And usually, under those circumstances, even a US supplier wouldn't have to be afraid too much, because usually the reverse charge mechanism would apply. But unfortunately, this does not apply if you're supplying to the military. And the answer is yes. That supplier must be afraid of a VAT registration here in Germany, and then in the second instance, he has to be afraid of getting knowledge about the VAT exemption under the SOFA. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Jens. And then to bring it back to Poland, Laura, your experience with VAT registration, companies outside of Poland doing this type of work. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, and the rules are exactly the same as in Germany. So if we are talking about the services connected to immovable property, to the real estate, like you said, the designing, construction, or something else, they can be settled as a rule under the reverse charge mechanism, but only if the recipient of the service is a VAT taxpayer. So in case we are providing services for military forces, this simplification does not apply, and then the registration is necessary.
Right. Very good. And then can you also address the question, I know you did a little bit in the chat, but just related to construction, because we do have construction companies as part of our SAME community here. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, I said exactly the same as a minute before, that there are the different rules for construction services because they are connected to the real estate. And as I mentioned, if the real estate is located in Poland, then most probably all services connected to it will be subject to VAT in Poland, but still it's possible to benefit from SOFA exemption under certain circumstances. So this is exactly what I said before, that it's possible to apply for reverse charge, but not for the military forces. And SOFA exemption is possible to be applied once you register, once the company service provider register for VAT purposes in Poland and obtain all these formal certificates and documents which are required by law.
And would you consider it a true statement that when considering to register for VAT in a certain country, or in Poland in this case, you would start with the analysis of the types of services you're providing? Is that what you would start with?
Definitely, yes. Some of the services can be subject to the general rule, which was mentioned by Jens. So which are taxed under reverse charge mechanism or just are taxed outside Poland. So then probably there will be no necessity to register for VAT purposes in Poland. But there are some, like you should be cautious when you hear about the property, transport, events, or leasing of transport means, where you should start thinking if this analysis is required, because then most probably the place of supply will be in Poland. So in place when you perform the transport, when you hand over the mean of transport, when you organize an event, when you where the real estate is located, and then most probably the registration will be necessary.
Very good. That's very helpful. Thank you, Laura. So Tim Conley's been talking enough about himself. I was going to open it up maybe to the community just a little bit. We're not done with our discussion. We're not at the end. This is not the end Q&A period, but just I want to open it up to anybody who might have a question currently on what they've heard. And if we don't have anybody, then we will move back to the Slovak Republic. Petra, this example that you put together, I think is very relevant. I think there's a lot of points here that speak to the experience that a lot of companies have in various locations throughout Europe. Can you speak to this slide, Petra?
Yes. Here is this example. We have foreign company with contract with US Armed Forces here in Slovak Republic. So this reverse charge can be not applied in this case because the receiver of the services, US Armed Forces, are not VAT established in Slovak Republic. So in this case, supplies of services connected with this immovable property services should be taxable in Slovak Republic by the service provider, so by the foreign company. And this is the necessary of registration for VAT. And then we can use this tax exemption according DCA. That's this illustrative example. If we have cases, for example, when foreign company is providing services to Slovak company with VAT establishment or seat in Slovak Republic, it's another situation. Yes, we can use reverse charge, transfer of tax liability, and the foreign company is not obliged to VAT registration in Slovak Republic. But these cases, or this case on the slide, is really for the situation if we are invoicing to US Armed Force. So, for example, in this case, US Army Corps of Engineers.
That's excellent. And then, Ken, I see you have your hand up. Is it related to Slovakia? Because I have one follow-up question to that.
It's related to a lot of countries, so please follow up.
Okay, thanks. And Petra, can I just ask you, so once you've done all that, we've walked through your illustration, we're ready to send an invoice. Can you walk us through the process a little bit? What does that look like when we're ready to issue an invoice to the US government? What is involved in that process?
Okay, maybe the next slide. There is application in practice.
Oh,
yes. So in this case, we can use this VAT exemption according DCA between US government and Slovak government if the following conditions are met. So the first one is registration for VAT of foreign company in Slovak Republic. The second one, we have to have completed tax exemption certificate signed by US forces. That's really important. And then we can issue this invoice with reference to the DC8 without VAT. And we should state also or include this invoice into Slovak VAT return and Slovak VAT records. And then the last condition is sending of invoice and this tax exemption certificate to Ministry of Defense of Slovak Republic. And they sent subsequently all these documents to Slovak Financial Directorate. So that's the process. We have a lot of cases when it's only one project for a couple months or for 1 year, okay? But the clients are asking, why should we, it's really the VAT registration necessary? There are another administrative costs, compliance, and so on. But really, I can answer the VAT registration is necessary. Without this registration, the tax authority would not allow this VAT exemption. So before starting project in Slovak Republic, really make this VAT registration, tax certificates, and getting all these documents to the Ministry of Defense. That's my recommendation. And after end of this project in Slovak Republic, you can, as foreign company, you can cancel VAT registration in Slovak Republic, or you can have this Slovak VAT ID number, and but you are not obliged to submit VAT returns per month. Yes, nothing to do, no costs, only this VAT number.
Very interesting. Before I switch, I have questions then for other geographies. Before I do, Ken, please shoot your question.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's see, Ken Staley, I've been in Europe like Tim for 16 plus years, have managed multiple IDIQs across 12 countries in Europe from industry. And so I have a two-part question. One is that that I've seen, let's say USACE or the US DOD will list a VAT registration exclusion for industry, as Tim noted earlier. Legal questions, though, will be directed to the US Embassy. The US Embassy will pass them to the Office of Defense Cooperation, and that office will then send them back to USACE, where there is no response. So, that's the first question. The second one is, I'm familiar with the situation in Slovakia and the VAT issue that went from February until I think it was November. Also in Norway, where a defense agreement had taken 3+ years to occur. So for the second question, there are times when a SOFA or defense cooperation agreement exists with clear exemptions for registration and VAT. However, after award, the local authorities will block execution of work until a registration or VAT are applied, thus affecting the schedule and execution of work. Over.
Good questions. I don't know if you all have thoughts on that. Your first question was very US government oriented. I don't know if you all have thoughts on that. The second one, though, Ken, is a great segue and was something that I was going to address just about now in the conversation, which is Petra has just kind of walked us through the application process. And as you correctly described, Ken, a lot of times it falls then onto local authorities in these countries that have to take it further and that actually have to agree that it is VAT exempt. I want to go to Poland. Laura, what is your experience with the local tax authorities and their awareness of this issue, and maybe even their, I don't know, the ease by which they make this process happen or not happen? Laura.
Mm-hmm. I already respond to this second question on the chat, but just to describe you what we are talking about. I'm not aware of any exemption from VAT registration. I am aware of exemption from VAT application. So exemption from being subject to VAT in Poland, not from the registration itself. So this is the first question. And the second one, Polish tax authority should not block the execution of work itself, because the work can be performed. However, the taxpayer may register even retrospectively. So it means that even if the company which provides, for example, construction services in the territory of Poland and was obliged to register for VAT purposes there, may comply with these rules even retrospectively, but and we call it regularization. But there may be some difficulties with applying the exemption. This is what I said at the beginning of our meeting, and the first question regarding applying SOFA, that there are some formal requirements like obtaining the certificate from US Army before submission of the VAT return for the certain period. So if you register retrospectively, it is rather not possible to have the certificate retrospectively also. So then probably the tax authority will argue to apply VAT, and the military forces will be able to recover it through reimbursement.
Yeah, and I realize you had mentioned that at the beginning. I think that's a point that really needs to be made very strongly, is that the timing of your VAT registration is critical to your ability to be able to meet, I think, I mean, based on some of my own experience, is very critical to be able to apply the exemption to your and be able to get the exemption certificate in time. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, is there an extra requirement on the exemption certificate? For example, in Germany, and I think Jens, you'll agree with this, that only needs to be confirmed initially by the US government. What about in Poland? Is it just the US government signing off on the exemption certificate?
No, it should be issued by the military forces, so by the US government, right? Because it's not that confirmed, but issued by the part of US government, which is the force or NATO, because we are talking also about NATO members. So yes, and it should be confirmed by the Polish Ministry of Defense.
Right. Interesting. We have a question from Meili.
Yes, thank you. It is also to Laura regarding the Poland tax. So the VAT is due at the sale. It is the VAT exemption is subject to the invoice. Actually, it is not a complete VAT exemption of a project or anything like that, or the services in general. It's really subject to the invoice. For that VAT certification, you need also host nation authorities to sign off on it, except you have a single authentication letter in place, which is also signed by both parties. So the question is, if you don't have that people who are authorized to sign that available, you are forced to fulfill your contract and execute, and then just to prove also your progress by sending the invoice to the US government, and they pay it, and you don't have that certification. Is there any chance to reclaim, because you're not able to address any VAT in your invoices to the US government? That's one thing, because the system does not allow you. Second, if you pay that, to request that back, you need the certification. So that certification is not present for you because the people are not identified or around to do so. Is there a way to track that VAT paid after the fact, if you don't miss this window at the sale?
Yes, it is. This is the reimbursement procedure, which is made can be made on a quarterly basis. So in case there is no certificate, then the invoice should be issued with the VAT, with the Polish VAT. The service provider pays VAT, and the military forces may reclaim VAT from this invoice.
But that means that the you charge the U.S. government, which is the
yes,
receiver.
Yes, you charge the U.S. government with VAT then.
Okay.
Because it should be neutral, so you cannot burn the risk of not paying this VAT or not reimbursing.
And there is a commission in the agreement to contact for kind of when there is issues regarding missing certification. Do you have some ideas who this commission is and how to get in contact with them?
But do you mean the commission between the contractors and the contract between the contractors?
No, there is a SOFA commission that's specifically for the taxes between Poland and the US, which you should also contact when you don't get your reimbursement for the VAT, and they will take care for that.
Meili, maybe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, maybe you can put that in the chat, the name of that, and we can look it up and provide it to this community. Like
yes,
after,
sure.
after the call.
Sure.
Yeah,
all right.
no, that's. And yeah, I think Brian might have a question. Brian.
So, not a tax advisor, but more than 20 years experience working various projects in Europe District. I don't know of an occasion where the US government has paid the VAT on an invoice. I think that certainly as far as the Corps of Engineers is concerned, if we submitted an invoice with the VAT on it, they're not going to pay it. So this, I don't, in my experience, I've never known the US government then go through the reimbursement process to obtain that tax back. Just my input to the discussion.
Let me take that up. I can only echo that that is basically my experience too. The US government will never accept a VAT charge.
Right.
So what we usually then have in those situations here in Germany, at least, because it all comes down to the question of documentation, is basically, okay, could you please substantiate which procurement agency was involved? Could you please provide the Abwicklungsschein with the correct signatures of the procurement officer and all those details? And that is indeed something which often went wrong, right? That we have purchases here in Germany, at least, yeah, that we have purchases from the military side which are not listed in the official documentation issued by the German Ministry of Finance. And if you're not listed there, I mean, what other insights does a normal tax officer have? I mean, he will look certainly in that list, and even that if there is a short misspelling, he will challenge the VAT exemption. So we are often involved in trying to clarify with tax offices. Okay, that is the exact background. That is the reasoning. We are indeed talking about US forces that are purchasing. And we have just practical issues in getting signatures and so on. Usually takes a while, I have to say, but usually it turns out in a good way. So at least in most of the cases I've seen, we were successful in supporting that VAT exemption. But if we were not, well, still US military won't pay the VAT.
No, that's a good point, Jens. No, thank you. And I'm going to take another question, but right before that, I just want to give a pre-question to Petra and Laura. Also, and don't answer this now, we're going to take Matthew's question next, but just so you can think about it a little bit, your experience with VAT recovery. Jens says it eventually works out, you know, you'll get it, it takes a lot of work, a lot of signatures, things like that. Just, it would be interesting to hear from Slovakia and Poland on that if you've seen success. But before you answer that question, Matthew, over to you.
So this, I hope this isn't too controversial, or but my question is, so it sounds to me like this VAT process kind of follows the procurement process from the initiating contract all the way down through all of the goods and services provided for that contract. And so my question is does the US government have a are they required to be registered in these countries with a tax ID and also follow the same process for VAT exemption?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, Jens.
I mean, I mentioned that initially. So the U.S. government, the forces themselves, are not acting usually as an entrepreneur from a VAT perspective. That said, they are not obliged to register. They can't register here in Europe. When talking about registration, it's really only the suppliers that are concerned. And also the risks only lie with those suppliers because of course they have to provide proof for applying those exemptions, and and here in Germany, I mean, it's similar as in the other European countries, what we have learned now. So even if we have an exemption at hand, you have to register, which also sounds a bit weird, honestly, because sounds like just an administrative efforts that are made here with no positive outcome for the exchequer. Yeah, well, nonetheless, they are doing it for a good reason, because the whole procedure is so complicated, and in the end, as a supplier, you have to indeed prove that what you are doing is to the benefit of the military, because if it is somehow to the benefit of just other persons, yeah, outside of the military, I'm not talking about the entourage that is covered as well, but if there is any sort of consumption that is not with military forces or their personnel, then indeed VAT needs to be charged. And that's why the authorities are so keen in looking into all that documentation. But it's really for the suppliers, not for the military themselves.
Yeah, very good question, Matthew. That was great. If we can go back to the other question I had, Petra, for you, your experience with success of the exemption process, and then we need somebody to go on mute. Anna. Yeah, thank you. Petra, over to you. Your experience, success or not non-success exemption process, Slovakia.
This DCA, this agreement, it's really new, only 2 years in Slovak Republic. So our experience is also by Ministry of Defense or Financial Directorate. It's really few of information, but this tax exemption certificate or this process, US military authority or authorities, they have no VAT registrations in Slovak Republic. They are customers. So all these suppliers, foreign suppliers, should be registered here in Slovak Republic for VAT and really obtain this tax exemption certificate confirmed by the US military authority, describing this project, amounts and everything. This is the most important thing. I think it's necessary to obtain. And my experience is there should be no problems with obtaining this certificate or problems. It can be signed by electronic means and as PDF document sent then to Ministry of Defense. So it's quite easy or administrative, not so big issue for obtaining this certificate in Slovak Republic.
That's pretty advanced, the electronic signature in Slovakia. I believe we still have to do hand signature in Germany. Laura, you have the final word. Your experience, success, non-success of exemption process in Poland.
Unfortunately, so far, non-success, but I hope it will finish with success. I'm a part of the proceeding for one of the clients where there was an issue with the certificates, and we tried to give the argumentation which Jens said, that this is for the benefit of the country and so on and so forth. However, a tax authority stayed unimpressed with such a clarification. We are now at the Ministry of Finance trying to convince them to our standpoint. Still waiting for the conclusions, so I cannot say anything more. However, this is why I said so. I said that this is critical to obtain the certificates, and otherwise, what the Polish tax authority claims and what they argue to charge VAT for the military forces. So we were not successful yet with the proceedings in this area, but we are still fighting.
Excellent, very good. And oh yeah, Meili.
I can concur with Laura. We have also a case with the Ministry of Finance where this is for construction services where the U.S. forces had nobody in the field actually, and even from the host nation, nobody was around, and so it was a U.S. military area, but without people actually. So
Right.
and also if you're early on in these countries, and you will see this also in Slovakia, in the Czech Republic, or in other countries, you will see also that there is not big representation from the U.S. forces on the projects, and especially when you do design work, you don't see anybody who can sign off paper for you, and especially when it comes for invoicing. So that's also that the Polish tax authorities are very on the formal thing, instead of looking at the general international agreement that all the goods, all the services should be tax exempt, and it is not subject to a process of invoicing or a certification who's signed by somebody which is also not in the agreement. He's authorized or not. That was the biggest question at the time, that
Right.
from the Polish side, nobody got informed that they are now authorized to sign VAT certifications. So that's kind of a thing which, I can just agree.
And I think that brings us then really, I think I can wrap up now. I mean, there's just so many important points that, and based on this conversation, you hear how complicated it is. And the purpose of today's call, I didn't think we were going to come out with any perfect solutions or anything like that, as much as generating maybe even more questions. And it's a good thing, because this is an ongoing conversation. SAME plans to have this topic at their regional event in Naples, Italy, which is scheduled for the first quarter of the calendar year. Expect more details on that. Don't want to steal Sharice's thunder on it, but I did want to mention it, as well as I think the Rhein-Main Post will also pick this up again. And we will consolidate some of the key points from this discussion and bring those to Naples so that we can continue to have this really important discussion. The other point I would say is, you've heard how complicated it is. I think all of our tax experts today express that the more you prepare, the earlier you register, the earlier you get your exemption forms in place, the better your chances are of complying and actually recovering any VAT you may incur on your project. So don't underestimate that. And because of the complex nature of it, it's people like our tax experts that we have that are very, very helpful in guiding companies through this process. So one, I would very, very much like to thank Laura, Petra, and Jens for being with us today and sharing your knowledge. I will, if you don't mind, make all of your contact details available to this community so they can reach out to you. Also, Petra was very kind to put together a separate presentation. I will make that available as well. And then we can continue to evolve this conversation as the level of work also picks up steam in these geographies. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. Thank you to our tax experts, and I'm going to hand it back to Brian to wrap up the meeting. Brian.
Thank you, Tim. So I think Tim has probably said everything I wanted to say. Again, thank you to Petra, Laura, and Jens for participating, for giving up for their time for this meeting. Glenn? Yeah, sorry. It's a huge topic. As we were talking about preparing this, there's a few things that I think have been brought out. I think we could spend another 2 hours probably talking about this. Not that we have time today. So thank you to you. Thank you also for those that participated with submitting questions and for providing comments and sharing lessons learned. Thanks to everybody in the room. Our next presentation will be in November, talking about resilience. Until then, stay safe, And thank you very much for supporting the post. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
You.
Thank you. Bye.